Welcome to another episode of K2 Disrupts. I'm Ken Chung, VP of Growth Strategy at K2 Digital.
And I'm Eric Yu, VP of Digital Experience.
So today we're actually going to unpack some terminology that I actually think we made up, which was creative in regulated spaces. And what do we really mean by that? I think people don't actually think about the limits and constraints on creative that working in a regulated industry like financial services, asset management, mining and energy really restricts us to, and means that we have to find new opportunities to innovate. And I think Eric has some thoughts on that.
Yeah, totally. Regulated spaces has always been a really interesting category for us. So one of the biggest problems with regulated spaces is the 80-20 rule, where 20% of it is black and white. There are things you can and can't do. But the problem is there's 80% which is subjective. And that piece is really where innovation comes in, where our creative designers really decide how far they want to push the envelope. Often many of them are going to look at precedence creating situations and are really going to design below that. And the problem there is they're no longer innovating. They're really just looking at what the past work has been and designing slightly more conservative to that.
Yeah, and then from an operations perspective and a growth perspective, we constantly see constraints around the creative staff in terms of how we keep that talent, how we motivate that talent, and how we make sure that they're going to execute in the regulated space and continue to evolve the craft within your organization. And after working through hundreds and hundreds of different projects across different regulated industries, we see some reactions to this, right? We try to create an incubator lab. We try to do a worldwide executive search for a top creative for our industry. And then we find when we put them inside of this innovation bubble, siloed from the rest of the business, not understanding that regulated space and not forming that muscle memory around the kinds of creative they can do, that it doesn't fully transmit from a design and customer experience through the UX and through to the developers. And I think one thing that Eric and I and the rest of K2 really focus on is making sure that that experience is really going to continue to gain steam, and that the learnings that you get through each iteration don't cause you to be tripped up by regulatory or cause you to be tripped up in any way that would cause some of the reputational risk you see when both the creative and UX don't line up for a financial services or a cocktail test kind of situation.
One of the biggest risks is that over time, designers, they kind of get beaten down. They get beaten down based on the space that they're in, the regulatory space that they're in, and they start to get more and more conservative in their designs. And they're unwilling to push that envelope to really go beyond so what currently is being done today. So what we try and encourage with our team is we try and encourage them to push slightly beyond. So if we think about level 10, we look at level 11, not level 20, for example, where retail would be, but just above the envelope of what's being done today. So then working within the client's brand, their audience, understanding whether we can maintain that level of amplitude or we need to dial it back a bit.
Yeah, so I think what you're seeing is that in all of the regulated industries, Eric and myself focus on making sure that we work on an organizational strategy and a learning strategy for organizations so that they can retain the creative brand experience and the creative tenor that they want in the execution of their corporate strategy. And I think our extensive experience at K2 Digital really lends itself to creating models that make sense. So if you have projects, initiatives, or are trying to execute and are facing this challenge, Eric and I really want to hear from you. Reach out on social media, reach out to us directly, and we'd love to help your company innovate today in the creative space. So that's it for this episode of K2D, and we look forward to talking to you on our next episode.